Hi guys, Petra here from Petra Fisher Movement, coming at you with a few tips for what you can do if you have tennis elbow. So I myself have given myself tennis elbow in the not too distant past. I got it when we were renovating our house before we left Toronto, and it's been pretty much gone for about a year now, but every so often if I do too many push-ups or spend too much time on the computer, it'll flare back up. And so I just wanted to share what's helped me and some things for you to think about if you have some tennis elbow discomfort. So first thing to know is tennis elbow shouldn't really be called tennis elbow because it's really just an overuse injury in your elbow, usually felt kind of on this bump that's to the outside of your elbow if your hand is facing forward. It's very analogous to golfer's elbow, which is on the inner side of your elbow. Both are a tendon overuse disorganization type issue. Now, the first question to ask is, why is my tendon being overused? And sometimes that's literally just because it's your job. Maybe you're a house painter or a push-up doer or whatever it happens to be. If it's your job, that's putting you in a tough position because you need to find some way to rest and also load and strengthen the tissues there. That's always a challenge, but we'll leave that aside right now because if you have the opportunity to take some rest, you should certainly back away from whatever's overloading you. The next thing to think about is, what is the mobility like in the chain between your fingers and your neck? Because the elbow is getting sore much more probably because one of the other players there isn't doing its job. So a quick thing to think about would be, how much rotation do you have in your shoulder? So this is a pretty decent amount of rotation that I have in my shoulder. If you find that you can only go to here or only go to here, or if it's painful, if you don't have a ton of range, then I would immediately start wondering if shoulder rotation is something you should be working on. And the first step for that is always CARS, and then you can extend from CARS into other parts of the FRC, functional range conditioning, functional range release method. There's lots of stuff about that online. Always useful to see a practitioner as well to create more mobility in the shoulder. Next piece that's a likely culprit is what's happening with your neck. So a ton of us, particularly me, spend a lot of time like this with our neck, and your neck is going to be much happier here, and that is going to contribute to the function of this whole chain. Same thing with the wrist. If you find you're really lacking in wrist mobility, that could be a contributing cause or the result of what's happening at your elbow. So any mobility issue in that chain is something you want to look at. Having said that, I found that 95% of my issue has been cleared up entirely by doing CARS and adding occasional positional isometrics. So CARS for the elbow, really a few ways to do them, but we're going to look at a rotational method right now. So you can have your hands out in front of you like you're holding a tray, and all you're going to do is you're going to flip your palms down and flip your palms up. So it's simple as that. That's movement at the elbow joints, rotational movement. And you could do that with any amount of bend in your elbow. And you can and should do that with any amount of bend in your elbow because all those positions are useful and you're going to want your elbow tendons to work in all of these positions. It's important when you're doing this rotational work, you can definitely do it up here as well. This rotational work is best done fairly lightly for an injury situation and fairly frequently. So you could probably do this, I don't know, 1,000 times a day, 10 times a day, 100 times a day. Do it a lot, but lightly. And if it doesn't feel good to you, don't go as far or don't go as heavy or don't go as long. But what we're doing with this rotational input is we're asking the tendons to reorganize themselves in a functional way. Because what happens when you get an overuse injury is that as healing happens, it gets all disorganized, and then you end up with a crappy tendon, which you definitely don't want. So you want to keep just asking for the tendon to move nicely, and you're giving it a signal by constantly moving it. So force is the language of cells. Moving your tendons is going to tell them how to rebuild. Moving them frequently will give them that signal regularly. Moving it lightly will help not overload them. The full elbow CARS, absolutely an option as well. So here you're going to take your palm up hands, and you're going to squeeze them in towards your biceps, and then you're going to turn them over, and then you're going to press them down. You're going to turn up, pull up towards your biceps, turn over, press down, and then reverse by keeping your palms down, pulling up, turning over, and pressing down. One more time, turn over, pull your hands in towards your shoulders, palms up, press down. Now here you want to be thinking about using about 30 to 50% of your available force in the joint. You could go higher if you wanted to get a strength or performance goal, but again, we're going for healing here, so you want light. Now what you may be able to notice on me is at a certain point in my range, I start shaking. That's a sign that things are not awesome in my elbow still, so that is a place where I want to build a little bit more connection and control in my body. So for that, I'm going to take my cars, which is the rotation. So that's the axial cars. This is the full cars. Axial just means rotating at the joint axis. So this is a car and this is a car. And a car is a controlled articular rotation. Lots of backstory here. But you're going to take your elbow car, you're going to turn your palm face up. And what you're going to do, and maybe just one side at a time, you're going to imagine that you could go further and create more tension. So I'm going to think about continuing to twist my forearm as though I could get it to point towards the room over to my right. And I'm going to work that rotation. I'm going to hold there, and I'm going to increase the tension there to about 80 to 100% of what I feel is safe for me to hold of my maximum. And I'm going to hold for about 5 to 10 seconds there, and then I'm going to unwind. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my arm down about 15 degrees and do the same thing. I'm going to rotate into that external rotation. I'm going to hold for about 5 seconds, creating some stronger signals to my brain and body that it's okay to create force here and that it's doable to create force here. Isometrics are also analgesic, and we're doing an isometric here by holding tension without movement. Relax out of that. Let's try the other direction. So flip palm over. You're going to think about continuing the flip at the elbow, continuing that turn, holding into that turn, not creating any extra movement, but creating more tension for that 5 to 10 seconds. And then relaxing and choosing a new position about 10 to 15 degrees away. And again, working on creating tension, ramping it up, holding it there, and then letting go. So those isometrics you can do anywhere in your range, but especially where things are chunky and unhappy. And over time, that should be quite helpful in clearing out the tendon stuff that's happening in your elbow, giving your brain a little bit more connection to what's going on. So I hope these tips are helpful. If you're interested in getting more information on the cars, which I recommend for everybody, they're a great movement tool. I do have a course called Joints for Life, and you're welcome to check that out. I'll put a link down in the show notes. Definitely feel free to get in touch with me if you have any questions or comments about the video. Okay, thanks very much for joining me. Take care.